Welcome to What's New to Accelerate Your Migration to SharePoint and OneDrive. My name is Hani Loza. I'm a Principal PM Manager in the SharePoint and OneDrive team. I've been at Microsoft for about 24 years. Most of my career has been on the SharePoint team. Currently, my team owns the migration investments that can help you get to the cloud.
Thank you, Hani. Good morning, everyone. My name is Annie Wu. I'm a PM in migration team, focusing on performance and reliability. This is actually my 8th month in Microsoft. I'm excited being here, and I can't wait to share with you all of the investment we're making.
Awesome. Again, we're very excited to be with you this morning to share all the investments and represent many people who've worked hard to come up with these great features. We have a lot of content to cover today, so if I might ask you to hold your questions to the end, we'll leave enough time for questions. All right, so before we start talking about migration, there's two fundamental questions that I'd like you to ask yourselves. The first is, why do you need to move to the cloud? And the second, what value do you get from the cloud? Answering these questions are extremely important because it helps you come up with the right migration plan that can truly transform the productivity of your organization. I'm sure many of you have attended Jeff Teeper's keynote session earlier this week and many other sessions throughout the conference and the rest of this day to learn more about the investments that are happening and the innovation that's coming to you in SharePoint and OneDrive. And migration is a primary path to get you to realize this value. But unfortunately, migration has a kind of bad reputation of being complex and very expensive. And that's why we're here. We are committed to help you get to the cloud easily by giving you the options and the tools that can get you to the cloud and help you in your journey to SharePoint and OneDrive. So for the rest of this session, we're going to cover two main topics. First, we're going to talk about the investments that we're making and we're delivering to you in the SharePoint Migration Tool. Next, we'll talk about the migration infrastructure investments that can help all our ISVs and third-party vendors to deliver a fast and reliable migration to you. So with that, let's get started with the first topic with the SharePoint Migration Tool. So just show of hand, how many of you know of the SharePoint Migration Tool? Okay, some of you. For those who know it, how many of you have actually used the SharePoint Migration Tool to migrate content to the cloud? All right, few. Sounds good. All right, so for some of you who don't know about the tool, let me take a minute to describe what the tool is. So the SharePoint Migration Tool, we call it SPMT in short. Everything has to have an acronym. It's a simple and fast migration tool that's developed and supported by Microsoft. It supports migrating content from your file share and SharePoint 2013 on-prem, and you can migrate this content to OneDrive, SharePoint, or Microsoft Teams. Best of all, this tool is free and available to all our Office 365 customers. But don't let the simplicity of the tool give you the wrong impression, okay? Our customers have used this tool in all kinds of different projects. We first released the tool January 2018. That's less than a year and a half ago. And since we've released, more than 6,000 unique organizations have used the SharePoint Migration Tool to migrate their content to the cloud. That's 250% year-over-year growth. In addition, more than 10 petabytes, again, more than 10 petabytes of content has been migrated using the tool over the past year and a half. Again, over the past 12 months, 500% year-over-year growth. As you can see, we're extremely proud of the adoption and the impact that this tool is having on our customers and the success that the customers are having with their migration journey to the cloud using the SharePoint Migration Tool. And as I mentioned, our customers use it in all kinds of different migration projects, small and large. So let me give you specific customer success stories of customers that have used the tool. And these stories are individual customers. They're not aggregate, they're individual customers. For example, a single pharmaceutical company migrated more than 500 terabytes of content across 110,000 users in their organization using the SharePoint Migration Tool. You've got a well-known university migrated more than 300 terabytes of content across 150,000 of their users using the SharePoint tool. Oil and gas company, more than 220 terabytes. And others in different industries, like worldwide retailer and car manufacturer, each customer migrating hundreds of terabytes successfully using the SharePoint Migration Tool. Again, we're extremely excited about the impact the tool is having. So now it's like I look back to you guys, and it's your turn. If you have not used the tool, if you had any doubts about the capabilities, look at these customers, deploy it, and start your migration. And building on top of that momentum, and again, in our commitment to help you get to the cloud, we're very excited to announce the general availability of SharePoint 2013 full site migration using the SharePoint Migration Tool. Just show of hands, how many of you are running SharePoint 2013 in your environment? All right, quite a few. Well, this tool is for you. Awesome. So based on our data, SharePoint 2013 is the most widely deployed version of SharePoint 2013 on-prem. That's the reason why we wanted to prioritize delivering the capability for SharePoint 2013 to address the needs for most of our customers as a starting point, okay? So with that, Annie, can you show us how easy it is to migrate a 2013 site?
Sure.
All right, let's go with the demo.
Okay. I'm going to show you how easily it is to migrate from SharePoint 2013 on-prem to SharePoint Online using the SharePoint Migration Tool. So let's get started. What I have in front of me is the SharePoint 2013 on-prem site, the Northwest South site. What you can see in front of you is you have some document libraries, some files that we can collaborate on. On the top, you have a site icon, and also you have 3 sub-sites representing the 3 products: drones, games, and electronics. On the left-hand side, you can see the navigation panel where we place some of the frequently visited pages there. What I wanted to do is diving into the page sales by state. So in this page, you can see that there's 3 web parts. There are 2 list view web parts as well as 1 filter web part. I'm going to click on the filter web part just to show the filtering capability. Now this filter web part is connected to the sales target, so you'll see this list view change. Now in here, the next thing I want to point out to you is in this sales target list. In here, we have a special turn setting direction with taxonomy north, south, east, and west. Lastly, I just want to show at the sales event planning, you have a custom content type with overdue and on time setting. And they are custom content type because I can double check in my list setting. You can see both on time and overdue. They are custom content type. So those are all the things I want to show you the 2013 on-prem page. Now we'll transition to SharePoint Migration Tool. So this is the SharePoint Migration Tool. We're going to start our first migration. In here, the tool asks me, where is my content? Here you have 3 choices. There's SharePoint Server 2013. You can also migrate from file share. As well, if you have a large migration, you can put your migration information in the form of JSON or CSV file and upload it into the tool. For this demo, I'm going to walk through the SharePoint Server 2013. So I'm going to click on this. In here, the tool asks me to provide a SharePoint 2013 on-prem URL. So that's what I'm going to do here. So what the tool would do is go and check to make sure the site exists and also that I have the permission to migrate from the site. Next, I have option to choose whether I want to include all of the sub-site or just migrate the site. For this demo, we're going to try to migrate all of the sub-site. And then the SharePoint Migration Tool also offers you the flexibility to select a particular list or particular document library to migrate. So in here, if I click on it, you can see there's different options. But by default, I think we're going to just migrate everything for this particular demo. I'm going to click Next. In here, the SharePoint Migration Tool asks me to specify the URL for SharePoint Online. Notice that there is a URL pre-populated. The SharePoint Migration Tool will fill out a URL with your tenant name as well as your on-prem site name. Now, I'm just going to do a quick check to see. So the SharePoint Migration Tool will check to see if the destination site exists. If it does exist, you just remove the content to the site. What I wanted to do is give it a different name. Let's do SPC19. So we go and check, and it will find that the site does not exist. So we actually will try to create this site for me. So this is great, because that means I don't have to create every single site that I wanted to migrate to, because I know the tool will create it for me, simplify my migration. Isn't that great? I'm going to click Next to continue. So in here, I get to review my migration. You can give your migration a more friendlier name to help you track your migration progress. So I'm going to just keep the default. And here you specify what your source as well as what your destination is. So those looks good. You also have option to add additional source. But for this demo, I'm just going to keep it simple. So before we start and migrate, we have option to choose some of our settings. I'm going to point out a few settings for you. So for example, there is an option you can perform scanning only. This is a powerful tool because it lets you figure out if there's any issue before you start migrating. Also, you have option to migrate all of your file version history or only the latest version. Now, this will have an impact on your migration if you have a lot of file version. I'm going to click View All Settings. Here, you will get a lot more settings, but I'm just going to point out two more settings. One more thing is the SharePoint Migration Tool offer is you can exclude certain file by specify the file extension. You can also skip migrate old files based on their created after or modify after date. So the default setting looks good. I'm just going to continue and start migrating. All right, so your migration had actually started. So in here we have the migration progress page, and you can see there is a progress bar that will help you to keep track of the progress. You can also get some migration detail on the side as well on the top. I want to also point out two more things. You can post your migration by press this button, or you can delete your migration task by press the delete the X button. So this migration will take some time. So I want to transition to a site we already migrated to show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like on the cloud. The first thing you'll notice is a very nice look and feel and the modern feeling. The SharePoint Migration Tool will create a modern theme site for you automatically. So now let's take a look at this site. We can see we have the document library and the file on the side. And on the top, we have the site icon and the site name. Those are all being preserved, as well as the three sub-sites, drone, games, and electronics. On the side, we have the navigation bar, and you can notice that it preserved the page link as well, so we can see the sales by state still here. What I wanted to do is dive into this particular page. In here, you can see the three web part migrated successfully. I want to point out is the tool actually preserved your page layout. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to try the filtering. Just click Washington. So the filtering capability works. And I want to point out is the SharePoint Migration Tool preserved the web part property as well as web part connection. And let's take a look at the sales target list. You can see the taxonomy also migrates successfully. And Lastly, let's look at the sales event planning list. You can see the custom content type overdue on time all migrated successfully, and all of the content fidelity looks good. That concludes my demo. I'm going to pass it back to Hani.
What do you guys think? Can we hold the questions to the end? All right, now we're back in business. All right, so as you saw in the demo, very few clicks, extremely simple. You can get your SharePoint 2013 site from on-prem to the cloud. And in the current SharePoint Migration Tool, we give you the option to migrate your content and list. But in this current release, we give you much more than that. We support most of the core and key scenarios in SharePoint on-prem. We support migrating your pages, your web parts on the pages while keeping the layout, the web part properties, including the web part connections, your navigation, top navigation for your subsites, as well as your left navigation for the pages and other links that you might have added. We'll preserve that for you. In addition to migrating your taxonomy and your content types. Make it extremely easy for your customers and for users to migrate and hit the ground running in the cloud. Okay? So you get all of these capabilities on top of the existing SharePoint Migration Tool functionality. And I'll just highlight a few of these. We support bulk migration. As Annie mentioned in her demo, we have the option to upload a CSV or a JSON file that has hundreds of these source and destination mapping. You upload those once to the tool, and the tool is going to run in bulk. Also, we give you the option that you can run the SharePoint Migration Tool on multiple machines on your on-prem environment, so you can maximize the throughput of your migration. The SharePoint Migration Tool has a built-in content assessment. Also, Annie showed that, where you can run only in a scan mode. And once you do that, the tool is going to give you a very simple report of what's ready to migrate, what things that needs to be remediated before you migrate. And using this capability, you are guaranteed to have a very well-understood outcome after your migration. Next is incremental migration. And this is one of a key feature that we have. Just to describe what incremental migration is, today, if you want to migrate your site, you want to make sure that you don't lose any data. So what you would do is you put your site in read-only, migrate the content, and then switch the users to the destination. The problem with that is, depends on the content. Your migration can take hours or days. With incremental migration, your users can continue to work and have the same productivity, read-write access to the site, while migration is happening in the background. And then you can schedule those incremental runs. And every time, the tool will get the delta that has changed from the source and just migrate the delta to the cloud. And that, every time you run it, is going to be smaller and smaller until the time you're ready to switch to the cloud. Then, at that point, you lock the site on the source to be read-only. You do a final incremental run, and the delta should be very small. And then you switch your users over. So this gives you the flexibility to keep the productivity of your users while migration is happening, and the impact of the downtime should be minimal. Also, because the tool is free, it gives you the flexibility of planning your migration in however you'd like to do it. Some of you might want to do it as an IT admin for the organization, would do the migration for the entire company, or again, because the tool is free, you can distribute the tool to different departmental IT admins, and they can do the migration at their own pace only for their sites or for their servers. And finally, as you've seen, the tool is simple enough, even end users can migrate themselves. Late last year, we added support to PowerShell capability for SharePoint Migration Tool. Let me give you a little bit more about that. So this was a tough feedback from a lot of you and many of our customers, that they want the capability to automate and script their migration. And this gives you the flexibility not just to automate the migration tasks, but also to extend that flow and the process to whatever other automation that you need for your organization. And every functionality that we have or you have access to in the UI, you can do that in PowerShell as well. And we carried over the simplicity by giving you simple commandlets. One to register the session, commandlet to add and remove tasks that you want to migrate, a commandlet to kick off the migration, and another to check the status of your migration. Very simple. We're carrying over the simplicity that we have in the UI in the PowerShell automation as well. And this is all bundled together. So when you install the SharePoint Migration Tool, you get the UI experience as well as all the components that you need to start scripting. What do you guys think? But wait, there's more. So what we've done is we're announcing the general availability of the localization of the SharePoint Migration Tool in 11 different languages. So now, these languages are based on the usage pattern that we have monitored from our users. The good part is now you can experience a great migration in your preferred language. So again, this is another way that we're trying to simplify your migration process. Simple step, but it's a step towards simplifying the migration process, and we're going to do it one step at a time. But again, we're not done yet. This is exciting. So we've heard your feedback, and we're extremely excited to announce the public preview of the SharePoint 2010 site migration using the SharePoint Migration Tool. I thought you were going to like that. All right. Again, show of hands. How many of you still running SharePoint 2010? Oh, wow. OK, cool. I'm sure many of you know that SharePoint 2010 is approaching end of life next year, October 2020 to be exact. So this is a perfect time to start your migration plans. And we're very excited to give you the tool, to have it readily available for you, to get your sites from SharePoint 2010 directly to SharePoint Online. And with that, Annie, can you show us how easy it is to get the 2010 and how does it look in SPO?
Of course.
All right.
I'm going to show you how simply it is to migrate from SharePoint 2010 on-prem to SharePoint Online using the SharePoint Migration Tool. Oh. Cool. Thank you. So first, let's take a look at this 2010 on-prem page, the electronic navigation homepage. What we see in the homepage, we see some document library files, as well as we see some lists on the bottom. On the top, again, we have the site icon, as well as we have some navigation panel on both the side, as well. And here, the navigation panel includes a subsite, internship program and engineering. And we also putting a page here for ease of access. So it's called drone imagery, and that's something that I'm going to click on and to take a quick look. All right, so in this particular page, you can see there are 4 web parts. 3 of them are picture web part, and 1 of them is list web part. So I'm going to just quickly point out for the list direction 2 places. You can see that we have a special turn direction, again, with the taxonomy north, south, east, and west. And we also have a custom content type, map, and geotag. I'll show you those are custom content type. We just click on the list setting. You can see geotag and map. Those are custom content type. So those are just a few things I wanted to show on the 2010 on-prem page. Next, I'm going to transition to the SharePoint Migration Tool. All right. So again, similarly, we'll start the migration. In here, as you can see, similar to 2013, you have 3 options. You still have the option to do file share, as well as do a bulk migration using JSON or CSV file. The difference now is the SharePoint Server now supports both 2010 and 2013. So I'm going to just click on this to start. Again, the tool asked me to provide a URL of my on-prem. So I'm going to copy and paste my 2010 URL. In here, you can also provide a 2013 one, but for this demo, we just stick to 2010. So the tool will go and check to make sure the site exists, as well I have the permission to access the site. Next, I still have the option to include the subsite. That's what we're going to click on. And we're going to try to migrate all of the everything, but you still also have the send option if you wanted to do only lists or document library. That looks good, so let's continue. So similarly, the tool lets you specify a destination. So for this case, and we'll go and check to see if this destination site exists. If it doesn't exist, to create a site for you. So in this particular case, the site does exist, so we're just going to move all the content to this site. I'm going to click Next. So in here, I get to review my migration. So you still have the capability to name your migration. So the source and destination site looks good. You can add another source if you choose to. Everything looks good, so we're going to continue. So here you can specify your setting. All of the configuration is the same as 2013, so I won't dive into it anymore. So we're just going to use the default setting, and I'm going to start migrating. Awesome. So my migration has now started. This will take some time. So what I wanted to do is now transition to a 2010 site that we have previously migrated to show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like on the cloud. So similar to 2013, you can see a very modern team site. We have the file and document library here on the side. You can see on the site icon and site name, all of those are being preserved, as well as we can see the navigation panel on the top as well. It's all being preserved. We have the two subsites here migrated successfully. Again, I want to jump into the draw imagery site page. In here, we can see all of the web parts are there. We can see the three picture web part. And I want to point out, notice the layout is being preserved. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. You can see that you have the taxonomy migrated successfully, as well as the custom content type here. I'm going to just show you, we'll jump to the, now I want to show you with a little bit of customization, you can change the home page. We'll go back to home first. So this is what it looks like after the migration, but with some customization, you can have a much more inviting and collaborative team site, leveraging the modern experience. So just reminds you what it looks like initially. So I'm going to go back. Sorry. This is where we started. And with some customization, this is where you can have what you can have. Now I'm going to pass the floor back to Hani.
Awesome. We're very excited that we're able to bring this to you to help you in your migration. And again, as you've seen, same tool, you can migrate SharePoint 2010 and 2013. We have full fidelity between the functionality and the scenarios that we support migrating. Content, lists, the pages, the web parts, taxonomy, content type. We definitely support the core and key scenarios. So this should be able to meet most of your migration needs from SharePoint 2010 and 2013 migration. Also, as you've seen, if you have not specified the site and you let the tool create the site, by default, we're going to create a modern team site for you. Again, the tool wants to help you get into the modern experience and modern collaboration environment just from the get-go as you migrate. So by default, we create a modern environment for you, and you see the difference between the 2010 experience and the potential experience that you can have in the cloud. So I'm sure every one of you is asking, how do I get my hands on this public preview build? Well, everything to do with the SharePoint Migration Tool starts with this well-known URL, aka.ms/SPMT. When you go there, you'll have the page that tells you an overview about the tool. And on that, there are two links. There's one link for the publicly available release, And then the second one is the public preview build. So if you click on that build, it's going to take you to the download page for the public preview, and you can download that. Both of these builds, both the GA build for 2013 and the public preview build for 2010 and 2013, that's rolling out currently. So it will hit worldwide in the next week or 2 weeks at most. Look for version 3 point something. Okay, the current version is version 0.2, version 0.3, again, in a couple of weeks, it should be available worldwide. So I want to walk you through the journey that we've had so far and a little bit about our roadmap moving forward. So as you can see, January 2018, that's when we first released the SharePoint Migration Tool, only supporting file share and documents out of SharePoint 2013. Last year in the SharePoint conference, we announced the support for SharePoint 2013 lists. And around the end of the year, we added the support for PowerShell. We modernized the user experience to make the tool look exactly like SharePoint Online on OneDrive. And again, making sure that if you're migrating to a modern experience, we want to give you a modern tool to help you get there. And now in SharePoint Conference, we're announcing the 2013 general availability and the localization capabilities as well. For the rest of this year and moving forward, we're going to keep adding for support for additional SharePoint versions. 2010, we're starting with the public preview, and then we'll listen to your feedback and we'll add more capabilities, and we'll release that later this year. Next, we hear your feedback about SharePoint 2016. That's on our roadmap, and we'll be working on delivering that. So as you can see, in each one of these stops, it's a response to direct feedback from you. We take your feedback extremely seriously, so I encourage you to connect with us on user voice. We'll listen to your feedback. We use that feedback to help us prioritize the next investments that we have in the tool. So please connect with us and give us your feedback on what you'd like to see next. So we talked quite a bit about the SharePoint Migration Tool. I want to bring your attention and awareness to another tool that we have, which is the SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool. How many of you know about the assessment tool? Okay, quite a few, which is great. So the assessment tool is exactly what it is. It helps you scan your environment, both 2010 and 2013. We have more than 30 scans that looks at your environment and gives you a very simple report outlining which sites are ready to migrate, which sites might need your attention, or things that need your remediation before you migrate. Very simple report. The challenge with SharePoint on-prem, it's mostly has grown without a lot of governance, and we hear that feedback from admins. I don't know where to start. And this is a great tool that kind of gives you an overview of what you have and to build a great migration plan for SharePoint on-prem. In addition, the tool gives you usage information about the sites that you have on-prem. So it tells you which sites are currently being used. So maybe you want to prioritize those sites and you will get the biggest return on investments when you migrate, and which sites that haven't been used for a while. So maybe you don't need to migrate and pay the cost of migration for these old sites. So again, giving you the information you need to build a great migration plan. And then lastly, my favorite feature is identity mapping. The tool can help you map your identities from your on-prem identities to your cloud identities. The reason this is very important is before, you as the customer had to provide this identity mapping for thousands of users in Excel or something like that, and those used to be done manually. Often we hear back from customers in escalations that they weren't mapped correctly, and that could cause privacy or security issues. Now you can run the tool. The tool is going to do a great job in doing the identity mapping, gives you a report, and with that there's identities that were mapped and we have high confidence, and then we give you the list of identities that you might need to check and just make sure that these are done correctly, or maybe they're not mapped, and that's where you need your knowledge for these things. So again, the very powerful capabilities. Download it and try it in your environment. And again, like the SharePoint Migration Tool, it's free, available to all our Office 365 customers. So now we have parity between what we support in the SharePoint Assessment Tool in the SharePoint Migration Tool. You can get started with assessing your environment and scanning your environment, build your migration plan, and use the migration tool to migrate. And again, with both of these, we believe that we have a great support for the key scenarios that meet your migration needs. But for all other scenarios and special needs that you might have for your migration, we have a great ecosystem of partners that can help you with your migration projects. We work very closely with these partners to build on our migration infrastructure. So we have a great relationship with them, and many of them are present in the conference, in the expo hall. So feel free to reach out to them if you have specific migration needs beyond what the SharePoint Migration Tool can give you. So I want to go back to the first slide, the value and how can you maximize your value through migration. And the reason I want to go back to this slide is there's different ways you can think about migration. I encourage you not to think about migration as a lift and shift of what you have on-prem. If you do that, you can do that, definitely. You can do that. It might be the fastest way to migrate. But you might not get the most return on investment on the value that's actually getting you to the cloud. So I want to share with you some of the best practices that you might want to think about as you're doing your migration planning. Use your migration to modernize your intranet. So instead of using classic templates in the cloud, use modern templates like groups, teams, and for publishing sites, start with the communication sites. Leverage the modern pages and modern web parts, right? That would drive engagement with your users. Also, think about how you want to organize your sites after migration, right? On-prem, it's very common to have a site collection and hundreds of these sub-sites that have grown organically or inorganically. Leverage hub sites, where you can have a main site, the hub, and then a lot of associated sites to have common navigation, common theming. It's a better way to organize your intranet. Finally, if you start migrating your workflows and your InfoPath forms, consider if Power Apps and Flow might be a good option for you to modernize your productivity there as well. So again, you don't want to block your migration, but those are best practices to think about so you can maximize your return on investment when you migrate. And if you use the SharePoint Migration Tool, we help you on this journey as well. For example, you've seen in the demo both 2013, 2016, when we create a site for you, we're going to create a modern site, a modern team site, putting you on the right path to modernize your productivity and modernize your intranet. Later, you can take that site if you need to groupify it and then associate it with a team after that, you can do that, right? But at least you're starting at the right step. And for hub sites, you can always create your structure beforehand. You create your hub site, you create the associated sites, and then use the CSV option to map the source subsite to the destination URL that you already created, and then feed that to the tool, and we'll migrate the sites for the subsites to the new destination that you've created. So again, making it easy for you to get to the right state. So with that, we're wrapping up the first topic, the investments in the SharePoint Migration Tool. I hope that was interesting. So again, just to recap, we talked about the SharePoint 2013 general availability for all the sites, the localization support, and the announcement around the public preview for SharePoint 2010. At this point, I want to pass it over to Hani to talk about the migration infrastructure and the investments we're having there.
Thank you, Hani. So we spent the first part of our presentation talking about SharePoint Migration Tool and how it can help to accelerate your migration. What I wanted to do for the second half is to show you some of the migration infrastructure investment we're making to empower our partners to migrate faster and more reliably and to provide you a better migration experience. So let's get started. First, let's take a look at what are some of the top customer feedback that we're getting. So there are three. My migration is slow. I'm getting throttled. and also it's difficult to migrate sharing settings. Now, with a show of hands, how many of you share these feedback? Okay, we hear you. That is why I'm going to show you how we plan to address these feedback in the next few slides. First, let's take a look at migration flow overview to understand what's impacting the migration speed. So we have the customer environment. That's where your data and your source reside. And we also have the destination, or the cloud, which is also SharePoint and OneDrive. In between, we have the migration tool. So first, I want to take a quick look and understand what's impacting the speed between the customer environment as well as the migration tool. What we know is the speed between the customer environment and the migration tool is highly dependent on the customer's network, as well as the type of district the customer is using. Today, we have a guidance to help you plan your migration. And I have a link available at the end of this PowerPoint slides. So what I wanted to do is focus more on the communication between the migration tool and the SharePoint and OneDrive. So there are many different migration tools out there. Each of them has a different implementation and design, using different SharePoint codes to talk to the cloud. We know that when any inefficient code is made, it adds the load on the server side. And as more and more inefficient codes are made, more and more loads are added. And when a certain threshold is hit, that's where throttling comes in. Now I want to talk a little bit about throttling. First of all, throttling is actually not bad. Throttling is in place to protect the server. And throttling is also in place to ensure that you have a good user experience. Now, with that said, we do want to double-click on this section to understand what are some of the top performance scenarios that's triggering throttling today. So what we did is we did a study, and we also reached out to our partners to help us identify two scenarios. The first one is the incremental migration. This is something that Hani mentioned earlier. For this particular case, it's where you are actually, you're migrating, but you're still making changes to your source. So what the tool needs to do is try to migrate the delta. Basically, what got changed, what hasn't been migrated. So the tool, what needs to do is read from the cloud or the SharePoint and OneDrive to figure out what's already on the cloud. So what we see is there's a lot of traffic, a lot of query, and creating a heavy load on the server side. The second case is a post-migration verification. For this particular case, the tool has completed migration, but it wants to ensure what's in the source match what's in the destination. So the tool, again, will have to do is to do a lot of read and query from the cloud to see, hey, what is it on the cloud, and does it match is what's in the source? So with that in mind, I'm excited to announce our first investment to help to address this top migration scenario that we're seeing. This is a brand new API that will allow the migration tool to read the metadata from the cloud more efficiently, more reliably, and faster. So now imagine you have 1 million items on the cloud. Today, the tool will need to make 1 million calls to get all the data. But with this new tool, new migration API, you only need to do so with a single call. Tremendously reduce the number of calls needed, as well as reduce the load on the server side. Now, most of you are like, okay, that's great. What does that mean to me? What it means to you is that you will see a lot less throttling, as well as improving performance. Now, this new migration API will be available and roll out to all of our partners in the third quarter of this year. So stay tuned. Next, I have 2 more additional migration investments that I want to share with you. First is the web part. So WebParts is a similar scenario where we see there's a lot of traffic between the migration tool as well as the cloud. So what we want to do is provide a migration API to our partners so they can use it to migrate WebPart more efficiently and more effectively with reduced load. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about sharing. So if you remember, one of the top customer feedback is that it is difficult to migrate sharing. Today, the tool has to do a lot of preparation before it can even migrate the sharing data. And even after it migrates the sharing data, the sharing information is not available right away. You have to wait for the search to crawl through. So what this means is today to migrate sharing is slow and it's complex. That's why we're providing you with a Share It With Me migration API. With this new API, you'll be able to migrate, the tools be able to migrate sharing much easily. And not only that, the sharing information will be made available right away. You don't have to wait for the search to crawl through. As you can see, these are all the investment we're making. We listen and we take your feedback seriously. So connect with us on user voice. And now I'll pass the floor back to Hani.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. All right, so back to our agenda. What we have covered, again, the investment in the SharePoint Migration Tool that can help you migrate your content. And also, Annie mentioned all the investments that we have in the migration infrastructure that empowers all our ISVs and all our partners to deliver a great and fast, reliable migration when you execute this tool to migrate. So with both of these investments, we're helping you migrate your content. But some of you want a helping hand with the migration. So with that, I want to bring awareness to the FastTrack migration benefits. How many of you know about the FastTrack service? Very few. All right, let me tell you more about that. So our FastTrack team offers a migration benefit for our Office 365 customers with 500 seats or more at no additional cost. It's a great benefit that can help you migrate your content from file share, Box, Google Drive, and they can migrate it to OneDrive and SharePoint. The FastTrack team have done hundreds of these migrations, and they've developed great best practices that can share, they can share it with you. They can help you with assessing your environment. They can help you with building a migration plan, communication plan with your users in the organization, do pilot migration or to make sure the environment is set up correctly and everything is tuned correctly, and actually help you with the migration. It's a great benefit. I encourage you to reach out to the FastTrack team to learn more and how you can qualify to this benefit. In addition, the FastTrack team does more than migration. There's other benefits, including helping you drive engagement in your SharePoint Online, as well as they just released a pilot to help you modernize your intranet once you're in SharePoint Online. So again, reach out to the FastTrack team and learn more about the different benefits that they have and engage with them. So we talked quite a bit about the SharePoint migration because that's kind of the new investment, but I want to leave you with an overview of the capabilities and options that you have. So for some of you that have their content in file share today, you can use the SharePoint Migration Tool. We did not demo this, we demoed it before, but the tool is available to migrate your content from file share. Also, if you need a helping hand, FastTrack is there for you. We talked quite a bit about SharePoint on-prem migration. I want to bring your attention that the first step to migration is hybrid. I was talking to some of you before the talk. They just enabled hybrid yesterday. It is the perfect first step to migrate. You can experience the cloud without moving a single byte of your content. And then, once you enable hybrid, you start doing the new collaboration in the cloud, use the SharePoint assessment tool in order to assess your on-prem environment, and then use the SharePoint migration tool to actually migrate the sites. Finally, if your content is in Box or Google Drive, reach out to the FastTrack team, and they can help you migrate that content to OneDrive and SharePoint. And for all other scenarios that are not supported here, including tenant-to-tenant migration, leverage the ecosystem that we have with the third-party vendors and partners that are available that can help you migrate all other scenarios that are not covered by our tools and our benefits. So with that, I want to thank you. Annie and I, as well as members of the team, we can stay outside and take more of your questions. Also, I would encourage you to stop by the migration booth. We'd love to hear your feedback and talk to you more about your scenarios. All right, thank you so much.